Hi there, welcome to Meet the Candidates 2022. I'm George Callis, a Sea Ranch member, and I'll be your host today. We're going to hear from 5 of the 8 candidates: Mark Godley, Tim Fulkerson, Nirmal Merchant, Lori Foss, and Wendy Lazarson. The other 3 candidates, Gina Hubble, Stephen Mende, and David Skibbons, either declined or did not respond to our requests. And now, let's meet the candidates.
Okay, there we are. Okay, let's dive in. I've got five questions, and I'll just let you each answer individually. And some of these questions you may want to interact a little bit on, and that's okay with me too. You know,
Great.
It's fun. Okay, first question: why'd you decide to run for the board? Go ahead, Mark.
Either Mark.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Either one of you.
Tim, well, I'll given your tenure, I'll let you start off.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so as many of you know, I've been a member of the Sea Ranch for a little while. And honestly, I started coming up to Sea Ranch when I was 4 years old in 1967. I think my folks built the 7th house on the ranch in Unit 1, just below the Moonraker Rec Center. And it's a place that isn't just home to me, but it's also a place where I've raised my kids. It's a place where I've hosted my friends and family. It's a place where I can tell you, depending on the seasons, the quality of the air, the light, the texture of the meadows. There's so much about this place that is extraordinary, and it's deeply in my heart. And so when it comes to thinking about running for the board, it's a commitment I have to our community to provide the kind of leadership, I hope, and the management that we need to keep this place in not just sort of the natural environments, but actually in the relational environments that I have known for over the past 5 decades. I'm 59 years old, and I hope that the place that we find ourselves in today is a place, frankly, that we can move out of and into what I will just simply say is a better place. That we had a 10-hour board meeting 3 weeks ago to discuss a budget is, I think, extraordinary. That we as a community have had to deal with the issues that seem to have divided us in incredibly polarized ways is also striking. I imagine maybe it's some artifact of pandemic or of the larger national and now world politics that we face, that we haven't actually, any of us, been in the Del Mar Hall together in a board meeting for now over 2 years. And it seems to me that the fabric of our community is getting torn in ways that really concern me. And I feel incredibly fortunate to be here with you both and with those who listen to think about how we collectively can shift ourselves into a place that takes us out of the divisiveness, out of the highly critical commentary, and start to lean in together to rebuild the fabric. Mark shared with me a comment from one of our members. You know, there are 3 pillars of the Sea Ranch. It is our natural environment, it is our built environment, and it is the collection of people and the community that we create together that distinguishes us above and beyond so many places throughout the world. We have a unique opportunity to lead around our environmental heritage. We have an opportunity to do real things that address climate change. We have real opportunities to show the world what's possible when a group of people are committed together to creating a better environment. And so when you ask, why do I run? I run because, first of all, I have this amazing man in Mark, who I got to work with over the past 2 years on another challenging issue, short-term rentals, and where we worked for over 2 years together to create a community dialogue, to really find ways, the voices in our community, to create a proposal that works and moves us forward. And I felt really fortunate to have not only Mark, but a few other colleagues in that process, as well as a number of our members who were so powerful in their perspectives and their ideas. And I know together, Mark and I can create that same connection in our community that can move us through the challenges that we're facing right now.
Thank you. Mark?
That's a tough answer to follow. You know, if I were to say it very succinctly, I think our governance is broken. Our relationships are frayed. And when I say relationships, I mean staff to members, members to board, committee functioning. And as a 4-year member of the Sea Ranch, I've gotten involved in a fair amount of the structure, being a part of the finance committee, building some historical documents, and interacting with various committees in doing so, as Tim mentioned, part of the short-term rental task force. And I'm incredibly, I'm honored to be part of this place. And although I don't have the 5 decades of Tim's relationship with here, I hope this is the start of 5 decades of my family and my children and grandchildren being part of this place. And if we stay on the course that the organization and board has started down of divisiveness, lack of inclusion, and a whole litany of other challenges, I'm not sure that the next 50 years of the Sea Ranch are going to be as glorious and triumphant and heralded as the first 50 years. So I'm doing this to try to bring forward some of the history that is relevant and get our governance to a place of sanity.
And one other thing, George, I want to just note, Mark and I are here together because we believe in co-leadership. We believe in the value and importance of working together and working closely with the community. We believe in inclusion. We believe in community dialogue. We are taking a stand against some of the, shall I call it, the pet projects that seem to just be driven through the board, that where the community hasn't had a voice. And personally, there's a certain arrogance that that I find challenging. It is not a part, in my view, of the Sea Ranch ethic. It is not a part that I know in my history at Sea Ranch of how we as a community work together. And I will say in particular, the comments that have come from a couple of the board members and from some of the community members that have been so unkind towards our association is having a massive impact. I was there yesterday talking to some of the staff, and people's comments on the listserv, it's not just that it's highly critical, it's that it is really mean-spirited. I read something today that a colleague sent me that is going after our community manager. And I will say that having spent hundreds of hours as a board member in 2019 interviewing over 10 people for that job, Jennifer Merchant was so far heads and shoulders above every other person we interviewed. And to have the kind of rhetoric, the kind of mean-spiritedness that has shown up, it's something that it hurts. I find it personally painful. I know that it is got to be painful for anyone working at the association right now to have that kind of lack of trust and mean-spiritedness pointed at them, when these are people who I know, having worked with so many of them over the course of my 3-year board tenure, my 3 years on the board, from 2017 to 2020, these people are loyal. They work hard. They work on our behalf. And these comments are literally unraveling the association that serves all of us. And I think both, I can speak for Mark on this as well, both of us are deeply concerned, and both of us are taking a stand here to help ensure that our association is able to move forward in a positive way and to not deal with some of the mean, petty comments that keep showing up here.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Let's go to the next question, and you both have alluded to this a little bit, but if you would, tell us, each of you, tell us about your past involvement, both in the governance or in a volunteer capacity at the Sea Ranch. You've both alluded to that before, but if you'll give us a little more detail about that. And then there's a two-part question. So your past involvement in governments or volunteering here. And second part of the question is how knowledgeable or informed you feel you are about current Sea Ranch issues. Mark, why don't you start, Mark?
Sure. So as I said, 4-year Sea Ranch owner, part-time. I work full-time in the San Francisco Bay Area, have 3 high school age daughters. As they move on and we become empty nesters in the next 18 months, our time at the Sea Ranch will increase. And when we bought the house, I was completely fascinated by how does this place work? I didn't grow up in California. I didn't know the history of the Sea Ranch. I read the first bulletin. It said we need volunteers, and so I raised my hand and said I'd like to participate. I was fortunate enough to be asked to join the finance committee. I've been on the finance committee for 3+ years. I have been the secretary of that committee. And as I alluded to, myself with 2 other finance committee members wrote a document that we're pretty proud of, and we think all members should know more about, which is there was a lot of the architectural history of the Sea Ranch and the social history of the Sea Ranch. We wrote the financial history of the Sea Ranch. Myself, Mark Francois, and Marty Campbell, we literally went back and read 15 years of soundings. We went back and interviewed what I call the elders of the Sea Ranch, the people that put Sea Ranch Connect in place, the people that were responsible for getting Tank 8 built, the people that were responsible for creative financing. It was a 1.5-year project that resulted in a 60+ page document and a dozen or more references to historical documents of importance. In addition to the finance committee, Tim mentioned, I also was a part of the short-term rental task force and spent 2 years working with that in a very collaborative way, trying to find middle ground, trying to bring together these emotionally charged constituencies of, I rent my house, I should have the ability to rent it, you have no rights to impinge on that. First, the beauty of the Sea Ranch is being destroyed because of the rentals in my neighborhood. And I think the example Tim and I brought to that experience, I think, is a fantastic template to what we need to be doing at the board level. And it's one of the reasons we're presenting ourselves to the membership in a team format. I've done other things. I've attended most program committee meetings. I've attended archive committee meetings. I've attended most board meetings, far too many in the last year or two. And I would say I've immersed myself in this place to understand its financial underpinnings and its organizational underpinnings. Again, with in mind this multi-decade relationship I hope to have, having started with my wife. Let me pause there and I'll let Tim jump in with his background.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, Tim, tell us about your involvement, governance, volunteering, and then how knowledgeable or informed do you feel you are about the issues we're facing?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, started coming to the Sea Ranch with my sister, who's a year younger than I, and my folks in 1967 built a house, have been coming here for the past 5 decades. I really began my service to the community beginning in 2017 as a commitment to give back to a place that I love. And I was fortunate at the time to be elected to the board. In that capacity, I served not just as a board member, but as a member of the Utilities Committee, as a member of the Design Committee, as a member of the Facilities Committee. In 2018, 2019, I served as board chair. In that period, I was asked to take on and think about short-term rentals. It was clear that Airbnb and the various platform companies were beginning to change the character of the rental business on the ranch, which before that, for the last number of decades, has really been run primarily through a small group of businesses located in Gualala. And instead, we were seeing an escalation, which, you know, Mark was good enough to do some very deep analytics on it, which we provided as part of the short-term rental process. So I stepped up. I was away at the board meeting that they nominated me for chair, and I've learned my lesson. And so it was my honor and privilege to be able to step into that role and to serve in that capacity as co-chair with Karen Emiel, and to work closely with Mark, with Neil Moran, and with a couple of others over the course of that task force's work. I have stayed relatively close to the solar array work, which was something that we approved during my board tenure. I have also stayed close to the pickleball issue, which again was approved and, you know, yet to be completed. I maybe we'll get to issues, and I'm happy to you know, dive a little further into those things. I care deeply about the forests and the environment around us. I actually have worked closely with Kathleen Chasey and G.D. Jackson as part of the process to prevent Gualala redwood timber from logging the 8 miles that line the Gualala River. And obviously sad to say that we lost that battle, and Roger Birch and his team logged it. That is a really deep loss, and there has got to be some way to resurrect that. I'm not sure how we're going to do that, but my hope is that as a community, working closely with various of the Redwood consortiums, such as Save the Redwoods and Sempervirens, with the Sonoma County, basically Board of Supervisors and others, that we can find a way to acquire those lands and turn them into open spaces that all of us can enjoy, because that river basin is extraordinary. And what's been done is, it saddens me deeply, but it's just the reality of where we're at, I suppose. So those are some of the parts of my commitment. I also personally am so pleased to see the lodge return, and I have done what I could to help support the development or the redevelopment of the lodge in whatever small ways that I could. So that is such a kind of a hallowed place that has been restored and into so much of its beauty again. And I look forward to it being a community center that we can all return to as it continues to be built out.
Thank you. All right, our next question, and once again, there's been some allusions to this. This is about our board calendar. I went back. Yeah, I went back.
You did the math, George.
I did the math.
Give us the numbers here. I'm kind of curious.
No.
What do you got?
I went back to the published board calendar that exists on the TSRA website, and I actually went back to 2015. From 2015 up to 2020. So recalling that the board terms span each of a year because of how our fiscal years work. But in those 5 years, those boards were averaging 10 to 13 meetings a year. And that's every meeting that a board member is required to be at. So that would be regular open meetings, executive sessions, or some other special meeting.
Sounds functional.
Yeah, 10 to 13 were the numbers.
It also sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
Like a reasonable number of meetings.
Well,
A normal human being could probably do it.
Let me get to the year 2020 through 21. So the year previous to us right now. Last fiscal year's board had 37 meetings that required director's attendance.
So let me just get that right. So average of 13.
Yeah, 10 to 13.
37. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. This current board, 2021 through 22, including the ones that have already happened and the ones that are currently on the calendar, that are published as on the calendar, which will end May 31st. This current board will have had 42 meetings in that time. Once again, that's regular public open meetings, executive sessions, workshops, special meetings, any meeting that required directors to be present.
So we're not done with the fiscal year yet.
Right. There will be
a calendar. Yeah.
Right. If all the ones that are on the calendar for the next couple months happen, it'll equal 42 meetings.
I'm kind of exhausted just thinking about it.
Well, let me finish the question. So, as I'm sure you're each aware, each meeting requires some hours of preparation on the part of each director. You know, a board packet is possibly a lengthy document, so you need some time. You need some time before you
2 or 3 hours, let's say, for example.
You might need more.
Yeah.
Here's the question, and I'll let you each answer this in whatever fashion you think. Are you committed to that level of preparation and attendance for the next 3 years, should you be elected?
Wow, Mark. I'm guessing, well, we both want to jump in on this one.
Why don't you lead?
Okay.
Since you're a former board member and you've actually seen how the association can function normally.
Yeah. So I want to just start here, George, by asking you if I'm guessing you may not have this answer, but I think it would be interesting to notice if you went back to the 5 prior years of data and you looked at the number of meetings relative to like how much of them were executive sessions versus open sessions, you would probably see a fairly, like there were probably 6, maybe 7 regular open sessions, and maybe
That's about
6.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
And there was always an executive session that was done right before, and so they would have lined up very closely.
Yeah, that looks like it from the calendar to me.
Our regulars, the way we used to function, which seemed to work pretty well, was 6 board meetings during the year, open board meetings, which had either the day before, depending on the length of the executive session agenda, or even just the morning before. The executive session would occur before the open meetings, which would occur and go from typically 1 to 4, and sometimes 1 to 5. What you're describing is the dysfunction that is beyond me. Like, what is happening that our board is pushing volunteer members? Remember, these are people, some of them who have day jobs, to show up and spend and commit this kind of time and effort. It's not that it's just not sustainable. Clearly, given the fact that there are 12 people showing up and running for a board election, also check out those numbers and notice never, not ever in my history, has there been 12 people ever showing up to run for the board. So something, doesn't smell right here. And I think it's a reflection of the divisiveness. I think it's a reflection of some of the agendas that exist among a couple of the current board members. And I think we need to really examine how we as a board function and how we as a board step up to serve the community and start to create some, as I said, we need to start weaving some fabric again. And 42 board meetings is, I'll just name it, it's absurd.
Mark?
So to answer your question, I am willing to and able to commit to the full functioning of the board, whether it's 42 meetings, a number higher than that, or what Tim and my hope is, which is that we get that number down considerably. It's a major talking point or issue that we'd like to investigate. Now, neither one of us are in those 20 plus executive sessions, so we don't quite know what's happening there. Data Sterling does talk about what can happen there. It will be interesting if we're elected to find out if the topics are bleeding over into other areas. The hope is that we will be a part of a return to normalcy in the board's functioning. Tim and I both work full time, and the thought of us committing, Chris Jopp tracks his hours, a current board member, and he's over 40 hours a month, and that was a year ago. He gave us that statistic. That's insulting. That we're expecting board members to do that, and I, for the life of me, can't think of what's going on that would cause that degree of interaction. Now, I know all the board members. I've talked to all the board members, even those that I vehemently disagree with. I have the utmost appreciation and respect for what they're trying to do. That being said, I don't think anyone looking from the outside can't look at the current situation and come to any other conclusion that we are working harder and doing less than ever before at the Sea Ranch. Maybe the agenda is too ambitious, and we need to take a deep breath. We need to recognize the impact of COVID. We need to recognize the impact of a new community manager, and instead put all of that energy into rebuilding our connections. That tripod Tim talked about earlier, the community fabric, that's what we have to focus on at a board level, a staff level, a member to member level, dare I say, even a listserv level over the next couple quarters or years.
Thank you.
George, to answer your question directly, I am willing to do whatever it takes to serve and represent this community, but I do work full time. And I can't really fathom why 42 meetings is necessary. If that turns out to be the case, and Mark and I are both elected, then we will at least be transparent about why that is so. But having served on the board, I can't possibly come up with a rational reason for it.
Thanks. All right, this next question again, you both have made some comments this direction, but let me read the question and please respond. Many sea ranchers have spoken and observed about the loss of civility, about an increase in abusive speech in our political discourse, and what some would call an explosion of misinformation about current issues. What are your thoughts about this, and what are your thoughts about the impact of those things to the Sea Ranch?
Go ahead, Mark.
It's one of the reasons Tim and I have joined forces and are asking for members to support us. We think, going back to what we've said earlier, the example of how we conducted ourselves in the short-term rental task force, in Tim's prior board chairmanship and membership, in my work on the finance committee, we have tried to build bridges rather than set them on fire. And I think the discourse at the Sea Ranch is not unique to our little organization. You're seeing it at a national level. You're seeing the political acrimony spill over into relationships. And it certainly is, it breaks my heart to see it infiltrating this little paradise we're all a part of. I have on the listserv over the last 2 to 3 years spoken out on this topic many times. And as I've alluded to earlier in this discussion, I think you will see Tim and I working to bring people together, even those with differences. You know, what we agree upon is so much bigger than the differences we have. We need Del Mar back open. You know, we need, as we get into a endemic COVID world, we need to start repairing what has frayed, and we're in jeopardy of losing if we expect this place to retain its glory into the future.
Tim, will you add to that?
My sense here, George, is first of all, I mean, just think of who we are. We are a collection of people from various walks of life, but in general, this is a very smart group of people. Many of us are retired or thinking about it. And, you know, we have plenty of time to sort of ruminate and cogitate and write. And, you know, many of us love to do that. There are former litigators among us, and there are Stanford University professors and lots of super smart people, and yay on us. And it's to notice that just because we are so smart doesn't necessarily mean that we need to like always pop off. And it's to notice that our words have real power and real impact, and they can be used to connect us, and they can be used to divide us. And I think pandemic has, you know, it's had its impact. All of us have had to suffer in some form of isolation and not being connected. We're obviously not as together as often as we could be, as we used to be as part of Del Mar and the board meetings we used to have. And notice how technology has enabled the kind of, honestly, commentary that I honestly shocked me on our last board meeting. Think about it. When we met together in Del Mar, people could maybe have some critical comments as members stood up to speak or as board members spoke, but there was never a little sort of Zoom chat where you could, put in your actual thoughts. And it showed up in this last meeting where people were literally on Zoom chat cheering on a board member as that board member spoke. Really? Like, that's how we show up now? No. Remember, we have a real impact, each of us, on the whole system. Our voices matter. How we show up together matters. And so, to me, we have an opportunity. Instead of taking pot shots at one another, instead of being Hatfields and McCoys to one another, we need to step up and start to support and cheer on our association, to start to support and cheer on Jennifer, who I can tell you is an extraordinary leader and manager, and who has a lot of support among the people who work with her and for her at the association. If we lose Jennifer, not such an, difficult thing to imagine given some of the literally campaigning that seems to be being generated in just the last day or two. How do you think we as a community are going to identify and find and hire another community manager, much less a great one, number one? And number two, how much do you think it costs for us to go find and recruit Jennifer to get here and to bring all the other people, not just the actual money, but think of the time it took board members, because I was one of them. I sat on that committee, as well as the committee that hired an attorney. It takes a huge amount of time and effort. So we as a community have a choice. We can start to step up and support our association, and we can start to find ways to have much more thoughtful communications and interactions, or we can sit in our egos and take pot shots and, have the mean, vile comments get dispersed on the listserv and think that it doesn't have an impact. I'm telling you, it does, and it's insidious, and it, in my view, it needs to stop.
Thank you. All right, our last question. Once again, I've heard each of you make comments about this, but we'll let you talk about this a bit, and then after that, I'll let you each speak about, make some concluding statements and speak about what you think are the important things facing us. Okay, last question. The current board has often appeared to be unable to develop or reach consensus on critical issues at Sea Ranch. This has led to severe polarization within the Sea Ranch and has created difficulties for association staff. I've heard some members describe this board as dysfunctional. Would you share your thoughts?
Yes, there's mine.
Mark, would you like to add to that?
I agree. And again, I think it's easy to point fingers. I'm going to withhold a little judgment as to the cause, only because so much of the board's work has happened in secret, which I think is unprecedented and seems unnecessary. But one can't dispute that that the organization does not seem to be able to get to consensus and rational civil conclusions. We've talked about the budget meeting and the budget process in general as one recent example. You can talk about Tide Pool Beach, you can talk about Forest Carbon Works, you can talk about even the short-term rental task force. It isn't without blame or criticism. So again, it might be symptomatic of trying to take on too much. It certainly was exacerbated by the situation we all find ourselves in. And despite the enormous time commitment of the board and good intentions, I think, unfortunately, most normal members of the Sea Ranch believe they're not being represented effectively, and too much is at risk, which is why not just Tim and I are running, but 10 other people are running as well.
Thanks.
And my answer was a little, well, it was a little flippant. And that said, look, George, there are several dynamics that are going on here. It has not been an effective board. And in part, it is a reflection of some of the divisions that I believe exist. But more importantly, I think it's a reflection of the style of communication that exists. I know each of these people. I have spent time with each of them. I have my own personal assessments about them. We as a community should feel incredibly grateful to have people who have served our community for a long time in both Rich Hughes and in Scott Nevin. They bring a level of not only history and knowledge about the Sea Ranch, but they bring a level of civility. Like, who doesn't smile when you get an email from Rich, with some great little story or video clip that has cute little puppies or some other little thing, because Rich just wants to, bring a little bit of a reminder of, what connects us. And so in our other 5 board members, we have people who, in a couple of cases, have served in various capacities in various of the roles and have some sense of it. But, it's hard when you have a new team, not just a new team of board members, but now a new community manager. And the old Tuckman model of forming, storming, norming, and performing. Well, this is just storming writ large. And we haven't learned as a board, and the board hasn't learned, working with Jennifer and the association about how to create a real sense of trust, how to build relationships. Instead, it seems to be about breaking them apart just because. And so to me, that is really the first task of new board members, is number 1, to help stabilize the association, and number 2, to find the things that bind us and connect us together, to find ways to work together from a place of trust. And again, to be pretty thoughtful about the words that we use, the accusations that show up, and how we care for one another and tend to it, because it has a big impact on where we go here in the future.
Thanks. I think, given the amount of time and with your agreement, what I'd like to do, instead of drilling into issues right now, because I think each of you, as you've spoken, have brought up, it's clear what kinds of issues are important to each of you. So I don't know that we need to kind of go back and cover that again at length, and kind of in the interest of keeping this compact. But I do want to ask each one of you to make just a concluding statement about anything you wish to say. Specifically, why should our members think about you as a board member? Either one of you, go ahead. Just take a couple minutes each.
I'll start. I first want to extend my apologies to Scott and Jackie and the other members of the planning committee, which I misspoke and mentioned as the program committee. I have enormous respect for what they're doing with the CEP and various other projects. And I hope a lot more of the work that probably has ended up at the board gets pushed down to them, to that group going forward. George, the silver lining for me of the last year or two is the amount of involvement that I have seen spring up through membership. I'm sorry the circumstances led to this, but whether it's the 12 people who are running for the board, whether it's the dozens of people that dug through the budget drafts, never having seen Ellen's spreadsheet before, I think there might be an interesting effect of the ineptness of the organization that we're all marveling at, which is my hope is that what comes of this is a renewed commitment to our values, maybe a strategic planning process that involves more people and helps them understand how they can contribute. And whether or not it's voting for Tim and I at the board level, I hope all of this energy gets channeled into a renewal of what binds us and a process that allows all members, whether they're 5-decade members like Tim, whether they're 4-year newbies like me, to learn about this place, to participate in this place, and to make sure that we carry it forward into the next couple decades in good hands. Tim and I, we think the way we're going to be presenting ourselves in our statements and other information we put out there will allow people to get to know us in significant detail, both electronically, remotely, and by coming to the ranch and spending time face to face with people that prefer that format. And if you don't vote for us, or you vote for Tim and not me, I hope you'll try to get to know us. I'm not going away, regardless of what happens with this election. I care too much about this place that has burrowed its way into my heart. And I look forward to being a part of it socially, as well as administratively for a long time to come.
Thank you. Tim, can you make a few concluding remarks?
Yeah. First, I want to just thank you, George, for creating this opportunity. It's new, and it's personally, it just brings a smile on my face to be here with you both, and to imagine that this is a new, interesting way for the community to engage and to think about the issues that are here before us. I love Mark's comment. I'm not going away either. And we are committed to this place. We have a deep love for this place. I have a deep sense of gratitude that, through my board service and through working on the short-term rental committee, first of all, that I had a chance to come across someone like Mark. And George, you and I haven't spent that much time together, but I keep reflecting on the quality of the people that are part of our community. And so I'm committed to our community. I'm committed to our environmental values. I am committed because of my kids and because, for the world, that we can be an example of how a community responds to climate change. That is, I worked hard to get carbon neutral 2030 as part of our board platform. I think there's a number of things that we as a community can be doing, which Mark alluded to. We'll send out in our various statements together. So there's a number of things we can be doing to reduce our carbon footprint. And as I said, I think there's a way that we collectively can continue to live lightly on the land. And at the same time, we can continue to weave a fabric and a tapestry that we can all be proud of together as community members. That's why we're here. We're here because we love the environment. And as you start to live in this place and you get to meet the people, whether it's on the pickleball courts, whether it's out on a walk down to the beach, whether it's at Trinks or Two Fish, whether it's at the Ranch Cafe, or whether it's at a board meeting, you will find the most extraordinary people who have a deep love and appreciation for this place. And we volunteer, we step up, so we get to meet one another and we get to have some fun doing it. And so that is my hope for this year. And I am so proud to be working with Mark and with as many people who will work with us to create a community that we can all be very proud of.
Thank you very much. Thank you, both of you.
Well, let's begin. First question here. Tell us why you decided to run for the board.
Right, so I've been a volunteer coordinator for almost a year. Last year, we almost dodged the bullet in selling our Sea Ranch home and not being here for a long time. And so now that we had made that decision, we thought we should dive into the community head first. And also given the challenges that we have in front of our community and the skill set as well as the perspective that I bring, I thought there was value in me standing for the Board of Elections. So,
okay, great, very clear. Tell our viewers about, this is a two-part question. Tell our viewers about your past involvement in governance or volunteering at Sea Ranch. And then the second part of the question is tell us how knowledgeable or informed you feel you are about current issues at the Sea Ranch. Two-part question.
Got it. So my prior involvement in Sea Ranch, in the committees as well as other operations, the first time it started off with the website committee back in 2013, 2014. There were challenges with getting engaged given that I was part-time at that point of time. But then with the pandemic, it opened up new avenues for people like me to get engaged at Sea Ranch. So I jumped into the opportunity to participate in the communications committee. I have been the volunteer coordinator, like I said, for the past year, trying to drum up enthusiasm among volunteers to join the committees and so on. I've also facilitated several socials, virtual socials during the pandemic, as well as the new member mixer, and now I'm the master of ceremonies for the new member welcome.
Wonderful. And the second part of the question, talk about your knowledge or how informed you feel you are about the issues, current issues at the Sea Ranch.
Sure. So I feel adequately prepared, but not completely knowledgeable of all perspectives in the community, given the pandemic and our inability to engage at mass with people definitely has posed their own challenges. Thanks to all the information that's there on the website, I have voraciously studied them. I've also been conversing with a lot of members one-on-one through the mixers and through informal chat and communications over Zoom or while I'm at the Sea Ranch. But I wouldn't say that that covers everyone's perspective. That's my circle, my network. And as part of this campaign, I'm looking forward to learning more from people.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Next question. It's a little bit longer question, so or I can repeat it too if you need to.
Okay, according to the published Board of Directors calendar, which is on the website, the previous board, that was the 2020 through 21 board, the previous year, had 37 meetings requiring directors' attendance. This current board, the 2021 through 22 board, will have had, according to the completed meetings and the ones that are on the calendar right now, will have had 42 meetings by May 31st. Each meeting, as I'm sure you understand, requires several hours of preparation time from directors. You receive an agenda, and you receive an agenda packet with a lot of backup information, and so obviously directors are expected to prepare and understand the material before the meeting. Here's the question: are you committed to that level of preparation and attendance for the next 3 years?
That is a great question, and I'll put my answer in two parts. As far as commitment is concerned, yes, I'm very much committed to getting involved where our community needs the most time and attention from our board of directors. Having said that, I think we also have the opportunity to be very judicious about how we use our time, as well as, more importantly, how much strain we put on our staff, which has to spend so much time and effort preparing for those meetings. So there are two ways I can think of for solving that. One is having a good strategic plan for the coming years. Make sure we understand what our priorities are, what the priorities of our community and members are. Number two, be very acutely focused on a few priorities and accelerate their execution rather than having 10 to 12 different priorities simmering on a slow burn across several years. I think that would narrow down the focus. That would help our staff be focused on certain initiatives, as well as the board, and actually show progress. I think having so many meetings but showing little progress on any one of them really tires our membership, our staff, and also we as a board lose credibility in our ability to do things.
Excellent. So my follow-up question here is, so it sounds like what I'm hearing is that the board needs to strategically know what it wants to do, focus on making progress on a few things, and then would it be fair to say, therefore, the board would not require the same heavy level, right, heavy frequency of meetings because of the adherence to a strategy and focus and then progress on a few key items. Am I hearing that correctly?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, excellent, thank you. We're doing great on time, by the way. Great answers.
I come from McKinsey, so being succinct is like in our blood.
Well, and in media, it's about sound bites, you know what I mean? Which is, you know, things that the viewer can pick up what you're saying and understand what you mean in a sentence or two. Yeah, great. Okay, fourth question here. I'm going to let you respond to this however you want. You'll see where we're going here. Many sea ranchers have decried the loss of civility, an increase in abusive speech in our political discourse, and an explosion of misinformation about current issues. What are your thoughts about this, and what is the impact on the governance of Sea Ranch?
Great. Okay. So I think the members are justified, and I would say they are in the right in assessing the situation like that. There is the level of discourse or the manner of discourse on a few channels is not conducive for widespread participation of our membership in the discourse. Right? The other drawback I see is that the association does not have its own authoritative, trusted source of or voice in many of these other platforms. Okay? And that results in the proliferation of misinformation in many of these channels. the board needs to take, or the association needs to take, an active role in dispensing some of these myths and misinformation that is out there. Number three, we also have to understand that with the pandemic, the channels of getting this information have narrowed down to only digital channels. And the association's absence on those channels creates even further complicates the situation. You can't meet in the Del Mar Center, at groups at a time. We haven't been meeting for informal conversations during our one-night jack meetings or other social events or so on. So we definitely don't have those opportunities. There is no counterbalance to the narrative that is going on online. And all sea ranchers I have met in person are very, very nice people. Even some of the people who have used that language on digital channels are very nice people in person. I think the digital channels definitely create this perception of armchair activism or armchair critic, and there is a peanut gallery or popcorn gallery, a dynamic that it has created, wherein anything constructive being talked about on those channels is immediately being thrown popcorn or peanut shells.
Okay.
And so I think it's just a nature of the communication that the channel facilitates more than our membership. I think our membership at large wants to be very engaged in Sea Ranch affairs. They want to have very civil and very productive discourse. I just feel that with the pandemic, everyone's frustrated. Everyone feels disconnected. And that has just led to the discourse that we have today.
Thank you. Let's go on to our fifth and last question. Thanks, we're doing great on time.
My pleasure.
The current board has often appeared to a number of sea ranchers to be unable to develop or reach consensus on critical issues at the Sea Ranch, leading at times to severe polarization within Sea Ranch and subsequent difficulties for the association's staff. Some members have gone so far as to have described the board as dysfunctional. What are your thoughts?
If we look at the track record of the board and all the data points that we have about the board, I think the membership is not unreasonable in making that assessment of the board. There are a few things that the board could do differently than what it has been doing. One of them is the board has to be very ruthless in saying no to a few things, right? Which is where the focus on priorities comes in. If we don't have a strategy, if we don't have what is a vision and mission for the board, the staff, and the administration, then we do get a lot of other things thrown on our plate that we sometimes have to say no to if we haven't really defined that charter very clearly for our membership. Right? If we say that the board's role is to run smooth operations of our community and focus on reducing the operating expenses by developing efficiencies or increasing sources of income to help us run our operations in a smooth fashion, then in that cases, some of the other priorities will fall back or they won't come on our plate. If we say that we are also in charge of or should preside over strategic initiatives that are aligned with our associations and community values, then that also comes onto our plate. But we have to then decide what do we do in the short term to allow for us to do things in the long term. If we improve our operating expenses and generate sources of income in the short term, that will create funds and create more bandwidth for the board and resources for the board to do other more strategic initiatives going forward. But that story and that narrative has to be explained to the membership, and we have to get their buy-in. The other thing I think the board can do differently is not only leverage the committees more, but also hold them accountable for developing consensus in the membership before making their recommendations. I think today, some of our membership definitely feels that committees make some of the decisions, or they don't have visibility into how the committee collects the information from the membership. How many forums did they have for engaging the membership at large? Did we have any World Cafe like town halls? There is appetite for town halls from committees to gather consensus, to gather thoughts, and to aggregate their information to make informed recommendations to the board. I don't feel that the community feels that is being done. And I don't think, we don't feel that the board is holding the committees accountable for doing some of that stuff either. I think if we do that, then the recommendations arriving at the board would have mass consensus, or at least socialization of those issues. And when they are making decisions, the community would feel less not heard or less not involved by the board.
Would it be fair, I'm going to extrapolate a bit on your answer, would it be fair to interpret what you're saying as that when issues are looked at, particularly say on the committee level, where the membership can be sounded and where opportunities to hear from the membership can exist, that would increase the amount of the transparency on these issues at an earlier stage of the game, as opposed to something comes up on a board agenda and it's the first time members have heard anything about it?
Absolutely. The board meeting should not be the first time members should hear anything.
Yeah.
They should have heard it repeatedly. They should have had pre-reads. They should have had an opportunity to comment on things and to discuss things before it lands on the board's agenda for the board to comment on.
Excellent. Well, those are my questions. Would you like to make any kind of concluding statement or add any other thoughts about anything at all?
Yeah, I think overall, I think we are all, the thing I find very interesting, or I think challenging today, is that our challenges are a manifestation of us deferring some decisions over a period of time, whether that is investment in the maintenance and upgrade of our infrastructure, which manifest as broken water supply pipelines, or investment in scale of our community, which manifest themselves in reservoir capacity, the fact that we have to increase it. Or it could be simply that we haven't invested in tools and technologies or proper process analysis and optimization of our board operations, which results in our not being able to work remotely and tap into a, basically keep our processes smoothly running for continuity's sake, so resiliency's sakes for our association. And I think all of that, the pandemic has basically crunched all of that into a pressure box or a pressure chamber at the same, and exposed all of that for us, right? And at the same time, it has asked our board, as well as our staff, as well as our community, to make this huge change, moving from offline to online and everything virtual and everything asynchronous and disconnected in a very, very short period of time. So we have to appreciate that our staff and our board actually have survived 2 really, really challenging years. So I must commend them and I must applaud them for it. I applaud the volunteers, I applaud the committees for doing what they have done over the past 2 years. But I also think that we have to have we have to come to the realization that we can't kick this can down the road anymore. We have to make some very important decisions. We have to make them in the short term so that when something like this happens again, we're not in the same position.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Well put. Let's dive in. And I'd suggest, give me reasonably succinct answers. You can take a couple of minutes for each answer, but let's don't, the questions aren't the kind that you could go on forever, but It'd be better if you gave me, a little bit more compact answers that'll let the viewers, understand what your point of view is. And what
Absolutely. I strive for brevity all the time anyway.
Cool. Well, like I said, you have a few minutes to elaborate if you think there's worthwhile. I will at the very end, after the fifth question, then I'll just ask you if you have anything you want to add, or if you want to make a concluding statement, and that'll totally be whatever you care to say.
Sure.
Wonderful. Okay, let's begin then. Question number one. Let me get this in front of me. Question number one. Why did you decide to run for the board?
My motivation for running is, like a lot of people, I was surprised by recent hikes proposed hikes in dues, and also other recent developments like the description of the new campus, and legal fees, how we've been handling the access to the Seal Beach. All of those things sort of gave me pause. So when the opportunity arose, I was like, well, maybe I should just throw my hat into the ring and make my opinions known and see how many people agree with me.
Okay, wonderful. Very clear. Very good. Second question. Tell us about your involvement to date, either in the governance or in some volunteer capacity at the CRANCH. I'm sorry, let me back that up. This is a two-part question.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't make that clear. So the first part is tell us about your past involvement, either in governance at the CRANCH or in any volunteering capacity at the CRANCH. And the second part of the question is tell us how knowledgeable or informed you feel you are about current CRANCH issues. So two-part question.
Sure. For the first part, my involvement as a volunteer has been pretty limited. I'm on the safety team for our unit, so I have done the lectures and watched the videos and done the drill hunts and made sure that my walkie-talkie works and stuff like that. Nothing particularly complicated there. Other volunteering opportunities have been pretty limited for me because I'm working full time. So most of the other committees seem to be like, are you free at 10 a.m. on a Thursday? And I'm not usually. But the board seems like a worthwhile commitment. So I'm biting the bullet there. In terms of how informed I feel about the issues at TSR, as you probably know, I've been an active participant in the mailing list for the last 2 years, which is as long as I've lived here. So I certainly feel like I have a good sense of what the mailing list is talking about. Whether or not the mailing list truly reflects the broader views of the membership, I don't know, because I've only lived here 2 years and it's been a pandemic for all of that time. So I haven't met very many of my fellow ranchers apart from, my immediate next door neighbors and a few people around the place.
Okay, thank you. This third question is a little bit longer, so let me read it and I'll be happy to reread if it's too long. According to the published Board of Directors calendar, that's from the website, the 2020 through 21 board, that was the previous board from this one, had 37 meetings during that year that required directors' attendance. That includes open board meetings, executive sessions, workshops that the board held, any type of meeting that board members were required to be at. So that board 2020 through 21 had 37 meetings. The 2021 through 22 board, that's the current board, will have had 42 meetings by May 31st, which is when they end up. That obviously some of those meetings have occurred. The rest I just pulled off are scheduled on the calendar between now and the end of May. So that's the number. Each meeting demands some time, several hours of preparation time by a board of director to understand what's happening at the meeting. The question is, are you committed? Are you able and committed to that level of preparation and attendance for the 3-year term of the board?
The short answer is yes, or I wouldn't be running. I have experience running companies, so participating in board meetings is a thing that I have done before. I'm familiar with the level of preparation and involvement and work involved in sort of familiarizing yourself with the issues and being able to intelligently discuss things. So I don't feel like I'm going into this blind, but also I'm trusting to the democratic process here. If the positions that I intend to bring to the board are important enough that people vote me in, then that will be the sign to me that it is worth the time commitment. If not enough people agree with me, then I won't be on the board and it won't have been worth the time. So democracy will be its own self-fulfilling system there.
Okay, this is a follow-up question, not one of my 5, and I've reserved the right to throw in some follow-up questions.
Sure.
Boards previous to 2020, in other words, pre-pandemic, for a number of years, I went back and checked those on the past calendars on the website, and those boards met anywhere from 10 to 12 times a year, at least what's published. So obviously there was a jump in the number of meetings that went up, and an obvious question is what caused a tripling of the number of meetings, and it's a legitimate question, I think, to ask that, and if that level of meeting really accomplishes anything, or has something gone awry there?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons there's so much interest in this election, I was here for the last election and they were really struggling to get, even the requisite number of candidates, is that there seems to be a sense that we may be drifting away from the correct balance between the level of services we provide and the level of bureaucracy that the ranch is involved in. And our financial commitments. I don't think it's necessarily all one way. I think certainly there are some services that TSR provides that people consistently complain that those services are, understaffed, like DCEU is the most obvious one. But also there's definitely a sense that we, have hired a big time manager who is installing big time process, and there's a sense among some people that it might be overkill. I have run, the companies that I have run have been startups, so I'm very big on running as lean as possible, cutting out as many meetings as possible, focusing only on the services that really matter. And so that's one of the reasons that I thought some people might think I'm a good fit for this board. I feel like as a community, we are somewhere between being an HOA and being a small town. Some of the things that we have, like our own water company, are things that a town has, not an HOA. But by other standards, there's only less than 300 full-time residents. Last time I checked, we are relatively small. We are the size of, a building in New York. So there's definitely some balance to be found there between things that we do that should be town-sized and are town-sized, and things that we do that should be scoped more to a traditional HOA size.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next question. Number of sea ranchers have decried what they believe is a loss of civility, an increase in abusive speech in our political discourse, and an explosion of misinformation about current issues. What are your thoughts about that and its impact on governance of Sea Ranch?
Well, speaking of misinformation, I was very amused to discover that there was a rumor going around that I am married to one of the other candidates for the board. I thought that was a particularly fun rumor. I am not married to any other candidates running for the board. I think the mailing list is not a good sense, not a good indicator of the level of civility and discourse amongst sea ranchers in general. I think the mailing list has a few very noisy people who are also famously kind of grumpy. And for the last 2 years, with because everyone has been sheltering in place, the mailing list has had a much larger voice than usual in our interactions with our neighbors. So I think that has soured a lot of people on how we communicate and made people feel less good about the community in general. So I'm hoping as the pandemic numbers in California continue to improve, that we will be able to shift the balance of communication that we do from the mailing list to more in-person events, or even just other kinds of online events that are not, angry emails.
Right. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Once again, this is my observation from what I've heard from people, which you can agree with or not, of course.
Sure.
The current board has at times appeared to be unable to develop or reach consensus on critical issues at the Sea Ranch. This seems to have led to some severe polarization within the Sea Ranch and difficulties for the association staff. Some members have gone as far as to suggest that this particular board is dysfunctional. Would you care to comment or give us your thoughts?
I would preface by saying that I don't know the people who are on the current board well enough to be able to talk about their mental state one way or the other. I think we have been operating in a greater than usual information vacuum because of the pandemic. I think this board was forced to operate under conditions that are not normal to the Sea Ranch. So there was a lot more online communication, a lot less offline communication than usual. I think under the circumstances, every organization in the world has had a very stressful 2 years. So I am for myself happy to give the boards from 2020 and 2021 a break. It was an extremely hard time to be doing anything, far less running an organization as unique and as sprawling as Sea Ranch. That said, I do think there is scope for us making decisions more quickly and more transparently than I've seen, and I would love to be able to help do that.
Excellent, thank you. Thanks, those were clear, succinct answers. Those are 5 questions, so thanks. You've helped me make this compact. Let me open it up if you'd like to make any concluding statements or say anything you wish to say. Take a few minutes, please.
Sure, I think I present a very particular choice for somebody who would be considering voting for me for the board. I am atypical by the demographic standards of TSR to date. I just turned 40 this year. I am still working full time. I did not grow up in the United States. I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. And I think all of those things mean that I do not have what I would consider to be like the average background of a current sea rancher. I think more diverse organizations make better decisions. In fact, I don't just think that, I know that because there's bundles of research about it. So I think shaking up the composition of the board would allow us to bring different perspectives and make better decisions, because more diverse organizations do make better decisions. I wouldn't expect to be the dominant voice on the board. Certainly, I would be an outlier a lot of the time, but I think providing an outlier's perspective to a board can be a really useful thing to make us reframe arguments and think about alternatives. And so that's why I'm running.
Thank you. Very clear.
First question for you, Wendy. Why did you decide to run for the board?
I decided to run for the board because I have a true love of Sea Ranch, and it's always been, or since the early 80s, it's really been a part of my life in one form or another. And having recently come back to the ranch as an owner, as I said, I've always had some involvement, but I saw a lot of change, a lot of change, some good and some concerning. And I decided that I did want to do something to contribute, and I do have skill sets that I thought could be valuable and useful to accomplishing some good at the Sea Ranch. And that is the reason that I decided to run for the board. It's really that simple. So.
Thank you. Very clear. Would you tell us a little bit about your past involvement or involvement to date, either in governance or volunteering at the Sea Ranch? It's a two-part question. Tell us about your involvement to date in either governance or volunteering or whatever capacity at the Sea Ranch. And the second part of the question is, how knowledgeable or informed do you feel you are about current Sea Ranch issues? Two-part question.
Okay, those are two very good questions. So as far as my involvement as a volunteer at Sea Ranch, I cannot claim, since I'm a new owner as of, I think it was the end of September of 21, I have not, other than looking at the committees to see how I could become involved now, I have not volunteered at the Sea Ranch yet. I have a history of volunteerism all the way back from being a room mother and a school board member, and doing pro bono legal work for Second Harvest Food Bank and Prisoners Legal Services and Legal Aid Society, that sort of volunteerism. Again, using my skills that I have to try to maximize how I can contribute. So I do look forward to becoming involved, and I've been trying to figure out which committees are the ones where I can be most helpful, because I certainly don't claim to be an expert on everything. The other part of your question, so first was volunteerism, and can you remind me what the second?
How knowledgeable or informed do you
Okay.
feel you are about current issues at the Sea Ranch?
Okay, I've done a lot of reading, and again, you know, there is a gap in the time. I've always come up there as a renter. So from the time I first owned, when things were very, very different in the late 80s and up through 97, when I was an owner, it just was very different as far as getting involved and life there. And then there was a gap when I came up as a renter several times a year, and I've continued to do that. But I did not pay much attention, frankly, other than to my visual surroundings there. But since becoming an owner again, I've started to read, spent a lot of time on the website, a lot of time trying to read the communication among the owners in the various forums, and doing everything that I can to educate myself. As a full-time lawyer, one of my skill sets is I deal with many matters at the same time. And there are matters where I have to become an expert quickly on facts and law, and how the facts and the law apply, and how to resolve situations and find solutions and achieve goals. And so I know that I am extremely capable of grasping issues and figuring out how to get from A to B. So while I may not know every single thing about the pickleball courts and the solar array, I know enough to get started and I know exactly how I can educate myself so that I can make important decisions as a board member.
Very good, thank you. This one's is a little bit lengthier. The question's not hard, but it's a little lengthier of a question.
Okay.
According to the published Board of Directors calendar, that's from the website, the 2020 through 21 board, so that was a year ago, 2020 through 21 board had 37 meetings that required directors' attendance. This current board, the 2021 through 22 board, by May 31st will have had 42 meetings. Each meeting, as you can imagine, demands several hours of preparation time from directors. Are you committed to that level of preparation and attendance for the next 3 years, should you be elected?
I am committed. Anything that I take on, I see to the end. I do it and I do it well and with complete commitment. And what I have found is that when you give busy people tasks to do, they tend to do them and thoroughly. And I would not take this on if I did not feel that I could promise to attend meetings in person and to be there. Should they be in person, we hope that we'll get to that point again. So whether it's 37 or 47, I'm sure that if I take this on, if I'm elected, I'm going to do the job thoroughly.
Thank you. Many sea ranchers have decried the loss of civility in our dealings with one another. Also an increase in what some have called abusive speech in our political discourse, and what seems to be an explosion of misinformation about current issues. What are your thoughts about this and the impact of those things on governing Sea Ranch?
Well, when you asked me why I got involved, I will tell you that Sea Ranch, has always been my happy place. And thinking about it, being up there, and I would like it to continue to be my happy place and a happy place for many people in the community. And so when I started to see some of the discourse and frankly, a lack of communication and difficulty in determining how to get involved and how to communicate and how to find the avenues of communication, that is really part of the motivation for me to get onto the board, because I felt that these are issues I'd like to try to resolve and at least improve. And I don't think that some of the discourse that we see that's so negative in some of the social media, I cannot believe that that is representative of the Sea Ranch community. I think it has to be aberrant. And I think that generally society is very polarized right now. And with the pandemic, and we've all been so isolated, it may sound cliche, but I think as things start to open up and as we can possibly start to be together more and find better ways to share information and communicate, I am hoping that we'll see less of this negativity and more commonality. And although it may sound like apple pie and whatever the cliche is, I really do think that we share common values, or we would not all be attracted to the Sea Ranch because it's such a unique place. So there has to be something that we all share in common. And I think we've got to find ways as adults to be able to disagree and discuss, but do so in a constructive way. And I hope I can be a part of that.
Thank you. A number of Sea Ranch members have reflected that the current board has often appeared to be unable to develop or reach consensus on critical issues at the Sea Ranch. That has led to some pretty severe polarization, as you alluded to, and subsequent difficulties for the association staff to be able to execute policy. Some members have gone so far as to describe the board as dysfunctional. What are your thoughts?
I am coming in as a new owner, and I am looking forward to what I can contribute to the improvement of the policy setting for the Sea Ranch. And that is the job of the board. It's to set policy and have people in place that can implement the policies. And I have been on boards, and it being on a board, you've got to know what your role is. I do not know enough about each board member that is currently on the board, other than what I can read in the minutes, which is also, it's not that easy to click through the information. There's got to be a better way to allow all of us in the community to know what the board's doing and why. But I think that it's always easy to come in after the fact and criticize. I think what I'd like to do is come in and make it better and look forward and empower the people who are employed to work at the Sea Ranch, to do their jobs with the resources they need to do them. So I choose to look at this as, what can I do to make it better, rather than how did everybody screw up? And, so that's how I look at it. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, very clear. Thank you so much. We've got some time, so why don't you take a few more minutes to, we could call it a concluding statement, but you can wax poetic about anything on your mind. Take a few minutes, please, to say whatever else you'd like to add.
Yeah, well, I will say it's a daunting task to run for a board seat as a newcomer. And I sense that from what I've seen so far, many people know each other, people who are, there's some friendship groups and a community that I'm joining. And I do want people will have to understand what I can offer. I am proud of what I've accomplished in my professional life and my family life. I've raised amazing children while working full time, and have done it in an era where it wasn't that easy to do all those things. Frankly, as a female, because I'm not 35, with it coming up in an era where people have support and mentors. I kind of did this on my own. And I have a very good heart, and I have very solid principles and values about the community and being a good neighbor. And I would just like people to know, I hope that people can get a sense of who I am, that people want somebody like me to be a contributing policy setter at the Sea Ranch, and that they can respect that my success in using my verbal skills, my advocacy skills, my investigation skills, and my solution-oriented skills are what make me well suited to do this job well. And if I can convey that, and if people can get to know me, however, in this short period of time, I don't intend to engage and take a leave from my current job to run a full-blown political campaign. That's not something that I can do. But I hope that people can understand that I really do have a lot to offer, or I would not be putting my name in the ring. It's kind of a thankless task in a sense. It's something you have to want to do to contribute. And I hope people can see that about me and understand that I am doing this for the right reasons, and hope they'll give me a shot at trying to make the Sea Ranch a well-functioning, beloved, happy place for everybody in the community.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us at Meet the Candidates 2022. Those are your candidates for the Board of Directors at the Sea Ranch. Thanks again. I'm George Callis.